When you're explaining a model to someone else, it's often far easier to convey an understanding of that model if you can unfold it for them piece by piece as you explain it, as opposed to showing the whole model at once and having them attempt to pay attention to the specific portion that you're talking about and not get distracted by the pieces or parts that you're not talking about. So what I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about in this video is a way to do that unfolding with some features that have been built into Insight Maker. Specifically, here is an example of using 4 buttons to do an unfolding of this model. By clicking Setup, it closes the top and right-hand panels of the window and dims out all of the parts of the model that I don't want to show immediately. And as I click the Display button, it allows me to display and talk about parts of this model in the order that I want to present it to someone else. And yes, I'm not actually describing it as I'm presenting it here, because this isn't a presentation of the model, it's a presentation of how to unfold the model. But you'll see that with each click, I in fact turn parts of the model on or off so that I can talk about them, and then when I'm finally done, it will go ahead and display all of the pieces of the model so I can talk about it in total. Now, this function was developed using the API that's been developed for Insight Maker and the button primitive, which were developed specifically to allow one to create JavaScript to control aspects of the model. So hopefully you're watching this video on this wiki page. If not, you're looking at it in YouTube, and there is a link in the video back to this page. But on this page is the specific scripts with a little bit of description for each of the buttons that were visible on the previous slide, and I'll talk about those scripts in detail in just a moment. I simply wanted you to be aware that those scripts, the JavaScript is here with the explanation so you can look at it, and at the bottom there is a set of JavaScript for creating those buttons. So if you select this script and copy it and go to an Insight Maker model, and I'm going to simply move these out of the way because it always creates them in the same place. If I go ahead and tell it that I want to create a button, and now that I've created the button, if I go ahead and paste that script in that I just copied out of the wiki page, and then click on the button, it creates me the 4 buttons I need to do this function. And I can now get rid of this button because I don't need this button anymore. You can also take that JavaScript and paste it into the JavaScript console in the web browser that you're using, if that's a dimension of the browser that you're familiar with. But you don't have to. You can just use a button to create it. So within the setup button, the action for that is defined here, and because this is a small window, if you take this and make this larger, this field gets much easier to read. The first 2 commands, JavaScript commands in this button, are to in fact close the side panel and the top panel. If you're going to display some qualitative model that's not actually doing a simulation, or you're not actually going to build something, you probably don't need either one of those panels, so you can get rid of them. If you want those panels to stay visible, then go ahead and select these 2 lines and delete them out of the script. And then there is an array of variables and a set of commands, and you have to define them in terms of what you want to be visible and what you want to be hidden. So if I go ahead and select all of these objects and then click the Hide ID button, what it does is it gives me an object definition that says I want the opacity object to be 10, which is relatively dim, and I want the array of elements that are going to be acted upon to be all of the things that were selected. So if I now copy this and go back to here and put this in the 0 portion of that field, what's the matter? I've defined the first part of this, okay? I can then say, all right, I want to show this, so I click Show ID, and it gives me an object definition that says the opacity is 100. So I copy this and go back and select. Oh, I hate it when this does this. Select this again. Now I usually copy the array portion of this over into a text editor or something so it's visible on the screen, so I'm not having to go back and forth. So I can simply define this array and then copy it and paste it and replace those elements in this array. And I can extend this to make it as large or small as I want to. In other words, I can have more than 7 or less than 7. I just have to be sure that I set Imax to the index of whatever the last one is that I use. So if I had 25 of these, I would just go ahead and add some additional elements, and when I got done, I would make this 25. Now, rather than put you through the pain and agony of watching me develop all the rest of these, this was already set up. So let me go ahead and move this back over to here and show you the definition of the setup button when I finished with it, so that here is the array of things that I want to initially turn off. Then I want to turn on this item, then I want to turn on these 2 items, then I want to turn on these 2 items, turn on these 2 items, I want to turn off these 4 items, then I want to turn on these items, and then the last click will in fact turn them all on. And that's all done with this display script, which simply uses a couple global variables and walks through the elements of that array and sets the opacity on them. So if I now go ahead and actually execute this, setup closes the top and the right hand panels. When I click display, it displays the first item, then these 2 items, finishes the loop and displays the loop indicator. The next time it hides those, and then I display this loop, and the final click will display all of them. Once it finally reaches the maximum index of that array, it goes ahead and simply uses whatever's defined in the first array, the 0 element of the array, and sets it to 100, so you can click this repeatedly and it won't do anything. What I really liked in this version that was finally put together is that this, by selecting a number of elements and clicking show or hide, it gives you an object definition that's complete, so you don't have to modify it. You just copy it and paste it on the appropriate array element. So a couple of additional examples of doing this is, here is one with a slide that's going to be in the system archetypes video. It does the setup, does the display. Now it appears to display this item slowly because it just happens to be a large graphic and it takes it a while to display it. It displays this one, and then this, and then it's because it's redisplaying all of them to make them visible, it's redisplaying this item. So, and then this one for causal loop diagrams, which if you look at the way, oh, let me open this up first. You look at the way this is set up, so that you can tell it that you want to go ahead and hide a number of elements, make some of them visible, and which groupings you want visible. This particular one just turns things on after they were all turned off initially. So if I click setup, click display, it walks through building of the savings account model, and then it walks through building the balancing loop to explain those two loops. This one is a bit more elaborate, but it all works the same way, so that it walks through all of the relations between the systems archetypes one by one, so that I can talk about them as I'm displaying them, as opposed to trying to get somebody to focus on the particular item in the midst of all of them, and it gets to unfold over time. So as I said, this wiki page, and there's a link for this in the video if you're on YouTube itself. There's a description of each of the script that is embedded in each of the 4 buttons, and there's a script at the bottom which, if you paste it into a button and click on it, will create the 4 buttons for you in the upper left-hand corner of the model window. So I hope you found this informative, and I'll see you in another video soon, I hope.